Hey there. Ever feel like the internet you use every day isn't really yours? Like it's controlled by, central powers deciding what you see, where your data lives, maybe even how you connect.
Yeah, that feeling of not being controlled. What if someone's actually building something totally different?
Exactly. A digital world designed to, well, flip that entire model on its head.
A world where control is genuinely decentralized, built and run by the community itself.
Precisely. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore something called Qortal. We've pulled together the sources, articles, notes, even a pronunciation guide, right, to really unpack what Qortal is, how it aims to tackle some of those issues with today's internet, and, what its vision is for a fundamentally different digital future.
And our goal here is really just to guide you through this material, find those key insights, maybe some surprising facts to help you understand the core ideas and, well, the ambition behind this project.
Definitely. And Qortal is pronounced like portal, but with a Q sound at the start. So Qort.
Qortal, got it.
And its native coin, Qort, is pronounced just like the word court.
Court. Okay, Qortal and court. Simple enough?
Simple enough. Okay, so let's dive in. What do the sources say Qortal is fundamentally?
Okay, so at its heart, the sources define Qortal as a peer-to-peer blockchain platform. But importantly, it's not just another blockchain project.
Right, it's framed differently.
Yeah, it's specifically designed as a comprehensive alternative framework linked for the whole existing internet structure.
And the sources highlight its core principles right away, don't they?
They do. It's meant to be truly decentralized, community-driven, and developed, and this is a key point, built entirely from scratch.
No forks of existing code.
Exactly. No forks. And the fundamental goal they outline is creating, a secure and liberating digital world, specifically aiming to be free from the influence or control of big centralized entities.
That ambition, liberating the digital world, that seems to lead into a pretty significant overall vision for the project.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. The sources state Qortal isn't just building like an app or a single service. They aim to rebuild the internet entirely.
The entire internet. Wow.
Yeah, and even establish a framework for a worldwide economic system based on their network.
Okay, rebuilding the internet. That's a massive undertaking. What's the motivation there, according to the material? Why do they think that's necessary?
Well, it stems from the perceived problems with the current system. The centralization, potential security flaws, the, immense power held by just a few large companies.
It's a big tech issue.
Pretty much. They see a fundamental need for a different approach, for real solutions.
Yeah.
And they kind of summarize this driving philosophy with a phrase found in the sources, building a system by the people for the people.
Okay, so a truly decentralized, community-driven project aiming to basically replace the internet as we know it. That's a bold claim. So what makes Qortal's technical approach different from other projects out there? What did the sources highlight as unique?
Well, one key difference is definitely its technical foundation. It was built from the ground up using Java.
Ah, Java. Okay.
And the sources really emphasize this. It wasn't a fork of Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything else. It's a completely custom architecture.
And instead of using something like smart contracts, which people might know from Ethereum,
Right.
Qortal uses something different called CIM-based automated transactions, or ATs.
Exactly, ATs. The sources describe these as, well, simpler than traditional smart contracts.
Simpler how?
They seem capable of automating processes like, say, escrow, but without needing any third parties involved. More streamlined, baby.
Interesting. And there's this recurring theme in the sources, this no middleman philosophy.
Yeah, that's central. They describe the network as needing no servers, no cloud provider.
Like AWS or Google Cloud?
Right. No reliance on centralized DNS like ICANN, no ongoing hosting fees either. Everything is designed to run peer-to-peer.
So your own node is your point of control.
Precisely. Your node connects directly with others. The aim is to remove those centralized single points of failure we see today.
And the way it started is also presented as unique, this fair launch idea.
Yeah, according to the material, there was no pre-mine.
Meaning the creators didn't allocate coins to themselves beforehand.
Correct. No ICO, no venture capital funding. Yeah, it apparently just started with the code, the community, and people contributing right from block zero.
Okay, that definitely sets it apart from many projects. Now, this leads us to a pretty fascinating part of their design. How the network actually agrees on things, the consensus, and how users gain influence.
Yeah, the consensus mechanism they call minting.
Minting. Okay. But there's a longer name too, right? Something like
Yes. Proof of contribution over time and memory proof of work.
that is a mouthful.
It is. But the sources specifically contrast this with, say, traditional proof of work like Bitcoin uses, which favors raw computing power.
And proof of stake, which often comes down to how many coins you hold.
Exactly. Qortal's approach, according to the material, tries to de-emphasize both money and brute computational force.
So how does this minting, this proof of contribution over time, actually work then? What's the core idea?
The sources explain that time is the central factor. It's about commitment. By running a full node consistently over longer periods, users essentially level up. And this leveling up increases their weight, their influence in the network's voting system.
So the longer you support the network, the more say you get.
That seems to be the gist of it. The sources also clarify something. Sponsorship used to be a method, but the current minting process is handled through a more decentralized DAO approach.
A decentralized autonomous organization.
Right, so now running your full node over time is what earns rewards and lets you level up. They also mention this leveling is designed to be a slow process.
Why slow?
Well, they see it as a way to mitigate the risk of bad actors quickly jumping in and trying to gain control of the network. Makes it harder to manipulate.
Okay, that makes sense. And this influence gained over time from minting blocks that directly affects your vote weight.
Yes, within their voting system.
Yeah.
And this system, according to the sources, is what determines the project's future direction, how block rewards are distributed, that sort of thing.
And they mentioned other ways to level up might come later.
Yeah, tied to on-chain data input. But for now, it's primarily about that time commitment through minting.
All right. So powering all this activity, you need the native coin, which is QORT.
Qrt, this sounds pronounced Qrt, yeah.
So what's its role? What do you use Qrt for in this ecosystem?
Well, based on the sources, Qrt has several key uses. You need it to register names on the network as these act like usernames or domain names. Okay, it covers transaction fees, which go to the minters who are securing the network.
Right, rewarding participation.
Exactly. You also need Qrt to create on-chain groups, to publish private data, apparently, to reward other users, and even to set up crowdfunding campaigns using those automated transactions we talked about earlier.
So it's the fuel for various network actions. What about the supply dynamics? How much Qrt is there?
The sources state it started with 0 QRT at block 0. It's all been minted by the community since the beginning.
0 at launch. Interesting. Is there a maximum supply?
No hard maximum cap mentioned, but the release schedule is described as very slow. The projection mentioned was less than 10 million QRT expected to exist by May 2025.
That is pretty slow compared to many projects.
And they explain the rate slows down significantly over time. Plus, any future changes to this rate would require a community vote, and even then it's within hard-coded limits.
Limits like
The rate can apparently never go above the initial genesis rate, and it can't drop below 1 QRT per block.
why that minimum?
It's presented as a way to ensure the network can basically live forever without running into issues of extreme coin scarcity that might stifle activity way down the line.
Okay, so built for the very long term.
Yep.
The sources seem to really hammer home this idea that Qortal is intended to be more than just a coin, though.
Definitely. It's described less like a currency and more like a whole new way to interact digitally. A system designed for users to take back control of their digital future.
Building an ecosystem free from what they call corporate servitude.
That's the phrase used, yeah. Aiming for something fundamentally different.
Okay, let's get into some of the key features they've built on top of this foundation. What did the sources highlight?
One that sounds particularly unique and important for their goals is the Qortal Data Network, or QDN.
QDN. Right. How does that work? It sounds crucial if you're rebuilding the internet.
It does. It's described as a decentralized data layer. But the really interesting part, based on the sources, is how it uses the blockchain.
Okay.
It uses the Qortal ledger to secure the data, but it doesn't actually put the raw data onto the blockchain itself.
So where does the data go?
Well, the data gets encrypted, broken into pieces or chunks. Hashes of those chunks are put into a file, and then only a single hash of that file gets published onto the blockchain.
Ah, I see. So the blockchain acts like a secure, immutable pointer or reference to the data, but the actual data lives elsewhere, distributed across the network nodes.
Exactly. The sources say this design provides scalability, which, you'd absolutely need to rebuild the internet. For sure, it provides blockchain-level security for the reference, and critically, it keeps the user in control of their actual data.
And a major point the sources really stress is its anti-censorship nature.
Yes. Because the data is controlled by the individual node owner, and only that hash reference is on the immutable chain, the claim is that nothing hosted on QDN can be censored, blocked, or taken down by any external party.
So hosted websites, applications?
Right, websites and these things called QApps hosted this way
Yeah.
are described as essentially unhackable, uncensorable, and hosted indefinitely.
Wow, indefinitely. What about the cost? Is it expensive to store data like this?
The cost model described is also pretty different. There's a one-time name registration fee using QRT. But after that, publishing those data hashes to the blockchain, the pointers to your content, incurs no further fees.
No fees for publishing, so basically free forever hosting after that initial registration.
That's what the sources claim, yeah. Free forever hosting.
Okay, that's a big deal. And building on this QDN are QApp.
The sources give examples like QTube for video, QChat for messaging, QShop for e-commerce, things like that.
And these are built by
the community or the development group, published onto the QDN, and they run locally on the user's own machine, not on some central server.
Got it. Another key feature mentioned prominently is their trade portal.
Ah, yes, the trade portal. The source described this as a truly cross-chain trading platform.
Designed specifically to, what, get rid of centralized exchanges?
That's the explicit goal, yeah, to eliminate the need for them. It enables direct peer-to-peer trades of QORD with other cryptocurrencies.
Which one?
Currently, the sources mention Litecoin, LTC, and Dogecoin, DFGE, are supported, with others like Pirate Chain, Ravencoin, and Digibyte apparently.
And how does it facilitate these P2P trades without an exchange?
It uses those automated transactions, the ATs we discussed, and other automated processes that run directly on the individual user's node.
Okay, so the nodes coordinate the trade directly.
That's the idea. And the forces are very clear about the design principles here. No tokens from other chains get wrapped or converted into a Qortal version.
No wrapped Bitcoin or anything like that.
Right. No intermediary tokens involved at all. And crucially, no middlemen ever take custody of your funds. You keep control of your coins throughout the entire trade process.
That addresses a major pain point with centralized exchanges, the risk of hacks or freezes.
Exactly. That seems to be the core motivation behind it.
Okay, and what about QChat? That was mentioned too.
QChat, yeah. It's highlighted as a real-time, text-based messaging system built directly on the Qortal blockchain.
So decentralized chat. How does it handle fees? Sometimes blockchain messages can be expensive.
Well, instead of paying a QR fee for every single message, it uses unconfirmed transactions, coupled with that memory proof of work mechanism we touched on earlier.
Ah, using a bit of computation instead of a direct fee for messages.
Seems like it. There is a small QRR fee, but only when you initially create or join a group chat.
Okay, so mostly feeless for actual messaging. What can you do with it?
It allows for, secure, private one-on-one messaging, group conversations, and you can apparently even share QDN content like text snippets, files, pictures, links to websites hosted on QDN directly within the chats.
So integrating their data network with their messaging makes sense.
Yeah, creating a more cohesive ecosystem.
Yeah.
The sources also lay out how the project developed through a series of phases.
Right, they gave a timeline. Let's walk through that. Phase 1 launched back in June 2020.
Correct. That phase was focused on just getting the core network up and running, establishing the minter base, the people securing the network, and introducing that first application, QChat.
Then phase 2 followed pretty quickly, August 2020.
Yeah, and that was explicitly aimed at tackling that centralized trading issue by launching the trade portal.
Okay, so network, chat, then trading. What was phase 3?
Phase 3 added the really crucial data storage and web app hosting capabilities using the QDN. Okay, that's what enables the free hosting and QApps. The sources describe this as being fully functional as of 2023.
Fully functional in 2023.
Okay.
And now they're in phase 4.
Well, work on phase 4 reportedly started in November 2023. And this phase is arguably the most ambitious final step, which is this phase aims to drastically reduce and eventually maybe even remove entirely the reliance on traditional internet service providers, ISPs.
Wow, remove the need for ISPs. How?
By building a Qortal mesh network, it uses a specific protocol mentioned in the sources called Reticulum.
Reticulum.
Okay. And the idea is to enable true P2P node-to-node communication without needing the existing centralized internet infrastructure as an intermediary. Direct connections.
So the long-term goal here is basically a worldwide serverless connection, yielding your own internet layer almost, potentially making traditional ISPs, well, maybe not necessary in their vision.
That's usually the ultimate goal, yeah. Building their own completely parallel decentralized network layer from the ground up.
Okay. So connecting all these pieces, the unique consensus, this decentralized data layer QDN, the P2P trading and messaging, this phased rollout aiming eventually to bypass ISPs. Why should you, the listener, care about all this technical stuff? What's the payoff?
Well, the sources really try to connect it back to that initial feeling, right? That feeling of the internet not being truly yours.
Right, the lack of control.
You present Qortal as a potential path back to digital independence, restoring individual sovereignty online.
By solving problems
Like exchange hacks, data breaches, censorship. They talked about building a digital economy based on transparency and fairness, free from that corporate control.
So it's positioned as more than just tech. It's about a different power structure online.
Exactly. They frame it as an opportunity for you to actively participate in building this alternative future, to establish yourself on a system that, according to its design, can't be easily censored or hacked or taken down by some central authority.
And to host your content freely and permanently based on that QDN model.
Right. The sources actually make a really significant claim here. They position it as having a larger vision than any previous project.
Larger than any previous project, that's quite a statement.
They even suggest, and this is a direct comparison for the material, that it's what Bitcoin wanted to be when it grew up.
Whoa, okay, comparing it to Bitcoin's original ideals but aiming bigger, that definitely puts their ambition into perspective, based on what we've read here.
It really does.
Yeah.
So looking back at everything we've covered from the sources, Qortal's big vision for a truly decentralized internet.
It's unique time-based minting consensus.
It's UDN, that decentralized data network.
Features like the P2P trade portal and QChat.
And this really ambitious plan to build its own mesh network layer in Phase 4.
It definitely paints a picture of a project taking a very fundamental ground-up approach to challenging the status quo of how we interact online and who holds the power in digital systems.
Absolutely. So as you think about all this, maybe consider the sheer scale of what they're proposing here, truly replacing the foundations of centralized internet infrastructure and shifting that power back entirely to individual users. It's enormous.
Yeah, what would a world that actually runs on a network like that really look and feel like?
And perhaps just as importantly, what are the immense technical, social, practical hurdles, the obstacles that a project like this would inevitably face in trying to achieve such a monumental goal? It's definitely something to ponder.
For sure. If you're intrigued by this and want to dig into the source material yourself, the documents point to several places to learn more. There's Qortal.org, Qortal.dev.
The Qortal Wiki is mentioned, and their GitHub repository for the code and technical details. So yeah, we definitely encourage you to explore those resources, dive deeper, and form your own understanding of Qortal based on the source material.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Qortal.